Hi, and welcome to this installment of the second unit of our lectures, where we talk about climate and the different factors that influence climate. Now, first off, it's really important to make sure you're clear on the difference between weather and climate. Weather is just the conditions in the atmosphere in one place over a short period of time, like hours, days. When you want to find out what the weather is, you look outside. What clothes you put on your body tomorrow depends on the weather. However, climate is like weather over a long period of time. Climate doesn't change that quickly. It can change over time, but in general, climate is constant in places. If you want to figure out what the climate is, well, then you ask yourself, how hot is it usually in winter and summer and fall over the course of my experience in a place over many years and so on. So very important, weather is not climate. A couple of influences on climate that we're going to talk about that are important for us. And the first one is latitude. If you remember, latitude is lines of latitude are these lines that go horizontally on the globe as we usually look at it. Low latitudes, and we call them low latitudes because the numbers that we use to talk about them are low numbers. For instance, the equator is what? If you said 0 degrees, you are correct. Up here this is probably 15 degrees north. Down here we're probably talking 15 degrees south. These are low latitudes. They're near the equator. They're generally it's warm there, it's hot there because the sun's rays hit it directly. When you think about how strong the sun will be, if it hits something either directly or indirectly, it's the directness of the hit is important. The same way like the strength that, say, if somebody punches you, it's important whether that's a direct blow, whether it's hitting you straight on, or whether it's kind of a glancing hit. So if the sun's coming from over here and it hits directly, then that's going to be a strong hit. But if it hits kind of at a glancing blow, it's going to be less direct. There's going to be less strength to that. So up here in the high latitudes, which are near the poles, for instance, right here, the pole is going to be at 90 degrees north. These areas have cold climates. The second important influence on climate we're going to talk about is the presence or absence of large bodies of water nearby a place. Water works differently than land does. Water is a big, I guess you could call it a heat suck. It takes in heat, and it absorbs it more slowly than land does, and it also releases it more slowly than land does. So it basically acts as a moderating influence on any land around it. You can see, you're looking here at the Greek Isles. Greece is at a latitude that's, I'm not looking at a map right now, but it's, not too far off, say, South Carolina. But you are not going to see crazy snows on these Greek islands the same way you see crazy snow occasionally in South Carolina and Colombia, largely because it is so close to the sea. And these large bodies of water near land mean that land has fewer extremes in temperature. When it's hot, it's not going to be as hot. When it's cold, it's not going to be as cold. Often you get wind blowing in from the ocean or from a large lake or from the sea that the air will come off those bodies of water and influence the climate and the weather on the land. That's how the kind of the closeness of the body of water comes to affect the land. Right here, you're looking at Iceland, which is incredibly high latitude. But at the same time, you look at it, hey, you've got this place where there's no snow, where a lot of the year it's relatively nice to live, and that's because Iceland is a small island. Again, at high latitudes, but it's a small island in the middle of the jet stream, so it's right next to the Atlantic Ocean, and a kind of warmish area of that ocean. So it keeps the climate very moderate in Iceland. The opposite of an oceanic climate, which is what we just saw, is a continental climate. This type of climate happens in the middle of continents, far away from the ocean. For instance, where I went to college, right up here in southern Minnesota, is pretty far from either the Atlantic or the Pacific. The Great Lakes are important in terms of moderating climate and making the climate around them less extreme, but they're not big enough to overcome the high latitude and the distance from the oceans in a place like Minnesota. So Minnesota in the winter is extremely cold. It gets down to negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which, if you look, it's basically on the same line of latitude almost as New York City. New York City does not get down to negative 40 degrees, well, hardly ever. At the same time, because it's so far from the oceans, which moderate temperatures, it can get really, really hot. So, it can sometimes be over 100 in the middle of Minnesota, even though it's a very northerly area, just because it's not next to the ocean, which would slow down and make those hot summer temperatures less extreme. Here, as I mentioned, hot weather is hotter here, and cold weather is colder, so the climate is more extreme. The third major influence on climate we're going to talk about is elevation, and that's just height above sea level. Right here you're looking at Mount Kilimanjaro, which is in the middle of Africa. It is not too far from the equator. You would think it's a very hot place. However, it is so high on the top of Mount Kilimanjaro that the temperature is really, really cold. And so even though it's not far from the equator, you get massive amounts of snow. The air temperature decreases about 3.5 degrees Fahrenheit per 1,000 feet in elevation. So when you're talking about a mountain that is, say, over 20,000 feet, that means that you're looking at 60 plus degrees below what you would expect the temperature to be at sea level there. And this is not weather. This is not just what it'll be like tomorrow. This is climate. This is general weather patterns over a long period of time. And so Highland areas, those areas that are, say on the top of mountains, on top of really tall hills, these are colder than nearby lowland areas. And, as you can tell, this little ox or whatever the heck it is was bred on a highland area. It's so shaggy and hairy. It is definitely ready for cold weather. If you took it down to lowlands that would be warmer, it would burn up. It would be way too hot for this shaggy beast. And finally, cities. It's kind of weird, but pavement and concrete and the other things that we humans make, to build cities out of, they are really good at absorbing solar energy. They take in sunlight and they hold heat. So cities are a couple degrees Fahrenheit hotter than the areas around them. Kind of little did we know, but it's true. It's for instance, you go out on on a hot day, you try to walk on asphalt or concrete barefoot, you are going to burn your toes a lot faster than you would if you tried to walk, say, on bare dirt or grass. So that is the final of our important aspects affecting climate. So see you in class.